Hey, I'm back, and we're gonna go over. I promised you we went over Game 3 between Robert James Fischer versus Boris Spassky. So today we're gonna go over Game 6. Just imagine this: after Game 3, when Bobby won, he either drew or won all the way up to Game 6. Boris thought that the reason that he was losing was of something else. He thought it was the room. So Boris said to Bobby, to Robert James Fischer, would you mind playing again on the stage for us all to see? For everybody to see. And he agreed. So imagine them walking up the stairs to a table with a chessboard, the arbitrators right behind you, and they both shake hands, sit down, adjust their chairs. Bobby, or Robert James Fischer, is white. He adjusts his pieces. Boris Spassky sits down. He adjusts his pieces. They shake hands. They push the clock. And the game begins. Bobby does something that nobody ever would expect him to do in the opening. He didn't play E4. He played D4. Boom. And this shocked the world. Bobby, a C4 player? An E4 player? Playing a C4 move? What is this? The whole world was stunned. And Boris sat at that board with his preparation out of book. No longer did Bobby play E4. Everything that he thought Bobby was going to do is now gone. And so Boris plays E6. And so the game begins. Bobby plays knight F3. Boris plays D5. He's kind of playing the English opening. It's a really odd opening. So Boris is basically trying to play just principles. And so Bobby plays D4. He doesn't mind if takes happens, because then he has actually he's got E4, and now he's got this whole line. If that happens, then you undermine the pawn structure there, and then you can actually play here. There's a lot of different ideas that could actually arise from that move. So Boris plays knight to F6. Bobby plays knight C3. Development, but the C4 move shook Boris so bad that you're going to see what happened. One of the best games ever played in World Champion. I know some would disagree with me on that, but it's so beautiful that Boris stood up and clapped. It said bravo. So Boris played bishop to E7, getting ready to castle, and also he's putting his bishop to one of its best squares. He's also preparing to, if he needs to, play C5. After castles, he might kill castle, C5, knight, castles, C5, and then knight C6, some structure like this. So Bobby goes bishop to G5 because he wants to put some pressure on. If this bishop ever tries to move the pin, let's say over here, which it didn't, we'll just say over here. Now there's a pin here on the queen. So this is not a really good thing for Boris to want to have happen to him. So that's why he castles and says, you know what? That I know, Bobby, you played a odd C4 move. I'm just gonna safety my king. I'm gonna play my game and see what happens. And so He's safe, and now he's going to start developing. Bobby plays e3. The reason e3 is, of course, you guys can see, bishop is now out, has a scope of a6 to f1 diagonal. The bishop gets attacked. Bobby retreats to h4. Boris plays b6. He's wanting to fianchetto his bishop so that after takes here, he's got this whole diagonal for an attack. And Boris knows that Bobby's going to castle kingside because it's not a really good idea if you've pushed these pawns like this to castle queenside, because you're going to get stormed with these pawns just coming down the board. And so it's basically, if opposite castling, it's who can get their pawns going the most and have more active pieces that wins. So Bobby takes before the bishop can implant itself on b7. He takes, knight takes, bishop takes. And if we notice something, that Bobby got rid of his bad bishop. What was the color of the pawns mainly on? Dark squared. So now Bobby has a really good light squared bishop. This bishop here compared to this, okay, but not as good. And also, how many pieces does Bobby have developed? 2. How many does Boris have? Only 1. So developmentally wise, he's ahead. Bishop, good bishop ahead. Everything is ahead at this moment. So queen takes, knight takes, knight takes, and then now Bobby brings his rook to attack the c7 pawn. e6 is played. He forced Boris not to play this move here because this would do nothing now. The pawns are locked on this, on the d5 pawn. The d5 pawn is locked, which means if this bishop was to play here, guys, it would be biting on granite. This pawn's not going to be moved. If he plays here and then takes, Bobby will just take back with this king is castle, by the way, and the pawn will be stuck there again, and this bishop will have no scope. So bishop to b7 no longer is applicable for Boris's plan. So now he has to abandon his idea, and he has weaknesses around the queen side, a6 and c6. So this move actually did nothing but weaken these positions here and that. So this is all ripe for a knight to just hop into one of these areas. So not a good idea. So he has to play bishop to e6. He's got to develop. So it's not looking too much fun for Boris at this moment. Bobby's got full idea of a development. His queen's coming out now. His bishop may come in. His knight might even come in here. You never know what's going to happen. That's his knight is actually out of play. He can't put his knight on these squares. He can only go here. So black's knight is stranded to e7. So Bobby accomplished another idea with queen to a4. Developed his his queen, attacked the a6 square, which is where the knight would want to go. Also put a double attack on c6. Also he's attacking b5. All of the queen side is shut down by one move, queen to a4. c5 was played. It was Boris's chance to explode the center, because what he wants to do is break the center open, because if you notice, the queen's right along the file with the king. So if he could trade and then trade, this bishop has a discovery back here and would win the queen. So Bobby plays queen to a3. Reason is, now if he takes here, you guys already know, whoop, boom, see you later, queen. You cannot take. So he pinned the pawn against the queen. And it's kind of weird that now Bobby has the chance of actually winning a pawn. So it's like, really? What just happened? Now Boris has to react to that idea. Sorry, I just need to drink water. But if you notice that Boris, we talked about Jeremy Silman, when Jeremy Silman said that if your opponent is reacting to the moves that you're playing, or the moves that are on the board, you could be white. If you're playing white and black's reacting, it doesn't matter who it is. Let's say you're white, your opponent's black. So if black's reacting to every move that you're doing, you're winning. When you start reacting to every move that he does, you're losing. So just remember that. Boris is reacting. He has to play here. He potentially could go c5 rather than, but really, he can. My bad, because he'd lose the queen. That's right. Forgot about that. This kind of is forced. Otherwise, he's going to lose a pawn. If this rook stood there, he'd lose a pawn. So that's forced. Now Boris is totally cutting the knight out of play. And what would happen now is if the knight jumped in, Boris would snap it off, and then the knight would come crawling right into a wonderful outpost. And it's just not fun when you have this setup like Bobby had these pieces so nicely developed. It's just not fun. It's like, really, if you look at Boris's pieces, they're all muddled up. The knight prevents the connection of these two rooks. So it's like if you had an HQ and then you had something right in between the wires that you're saying, hey, I'm trying to talk to you, and all you hear is that's basically what this knight does. It makes the noise. But if you notice here, these pieces are all talking to each other in unison. And this rook right here is waiting for itself to be deployed. And that would easily be deployed by castle's kingside. And then these guys would be talking to each other beautifully. So it'd be a well-rounded, well-communicated war team. Good water. Okay, a6 attacks the bishop. He wants to get this knight so that these guys no longer do. Okay, I know I made the noise again. But takes. And remember something. He can't take here because of this. So really, does the bishop have to move? It's like, really? You know, it's like, really? Look at, it's like, but that's why this game was so beautiful. It's like, what just happened? You know, you pushed a pawn to, it looks like it's going to win a bishop, but if it does, you win the rook. And so Bobby gets to take, and then it's like he castles. Now all the pieces are in unison together. The rooks are well talking with each other. The queen or the warlord is talking with these guys really good. Everything is in communication. They're so perfect. It's like these guys are just working together as a well-tuned team. And this bishop knows that even if it gets killed or taken out, they're going to lose like a really high-valued army member. So the bishop's okay to sacrifice its life for that. Rook a7, sorry, rook a7. Now Bobby has to move the bishop. The bishop looks and says, I will not, says to the queen, I will not sacrifice myself. Do you see the communication is back with these pieces? No. And so the queen, or the king says, okay, we're going to move you back to e2. And now when the bishop's back to e2, it's safe and also still controls these wonderful diagonals. All of his pieces are more active. Bobby's pawn structure is in unison as well. So he's got 2 pawn islands. Boris has 3 pawn islands, which means if they go into an endgame, Bobby has a better chance of winning because of the pawn on a6. It's a weakness. The king could walk all the way over and snap it off. And these pawns are well fortified. These pawns are excellent. So it's just like everything's pointing to Bobby having an advantage right now. So knight c7. He's trying to develop something, get something going. He can't even play here because there. So if he moves, see, Bobby plays d4 because he can't take here because of bang. There goes, and then you have to move, and then snap. There goes, and there's no way to take advantage of this pin because all the bishop does is move, and then like that, check, and then more pain, not fun, not fun. So the queen retreats back. Now this take is legitimate because the queen protects the rook. So this take would be recaptured with the queen. So, but wasn't Bobby's plan? His idea was to take away the light squared bishop, which was Boris's most active piece. You're saying, but wait, can't the knights, just jump around all over and do stuff? Yes, but look at the placement of this knight. It would take it it would take it 2 moves just to get to a square that potentially would be good, but then Bobby would just rip that knight right off, and you'd have doubled pawns and just a mess. More mess, more mess, more mess. So takes e4. If Boris takes here, look at the mess of pawns he's going to have. Bobby can just play bishop to c5, threatening to take and win the pawn, bring the rook over, double attack. So he has actually 1, 2, 3, 4. He's got 5 pawn islands. And Bobby's only got 2. So who's winning? Bobby in that situation. So Boris sees an opportunity to make a pass pawn. But is it really a pass pawn? Because he just actually allowed Bobby to implant, if he wants to later on, to implant his his bishop to c5, which it'll guard this whole diagonal and all the way there. So he's slicing and dicing. But first, Bobby wants to stop Boris's idea of fortifying with e5. So he goes f4 right away. So now if this gets taken, takes, and the queen's under attack. So the queen moves, and now he locks Bobby goes e5. You're thinking, what does that do? Remember, the more pawns we can get off of this color, the better the bishop is. And he locked Boris's pawn on the same diagonal as the king. So all the bishop has to do is go to c5. Queen goes to b3, and you have a battery on the pawn. So rook slides over. He's trying to stop the queen from implanting itself there. It doesn't stop bishop c4 though. Bishop c4 is, the idea is still in play. This pawn is pinned. King h8. Queen goes to h3. Now the idea of winning a pawn is still there. If the rook takes, the bishop could actually take back, attacking the knight. There's a whole, and then now these 2 pawns, this would actually be a passed pawn if this is taken. And whose is better? It all depends on who plays the best. And as we see from game 3 onward, Bobby plays the best throughout the series, or the World Championship. So knight to f5, f8, trying to hold the pawn. b3. Now the bishop is fortified. No longer is this pawn taken. This pawn's attacked twice, and so everything is almost tied down to that weakness right there. Bobby potentially can go f4 if he needs to at a moment's notice, and maybe rook f and over. There's a whole bunch of different ideas. So Boris goes a5, trying to free up his bishop, his rook, because otherwise what was happening, guys, is if he ever tried to move the rook, this pawn would be snapped off. So by him playing a5, it stopped the protection of the rook, which now would allow this rook to kind of move. But remember, every move has a weakness to it. He takes, rook takes, and now Bobby has the threat of doubling up and playing rook to f7 with a lot of sadness gonna happen. Knight h7, rook f, rook c, f1. The threat is rook to f7, winning the rook, because there's no way for that to happen. So the queen retreats back, and the knight move had the purpose of guarding the f8 square so the rook wouldn't win the queen for two pieces. And so the queen now goes, she's getting ready to actually play into g6. And if she can get to g6, then the threat of f7 is real again, because you'd have 4 pieces, and then if this ever got taken, takes, now you have a queen and a rook here. You have a threat of mate on g7, guys. So Boris plays bishop, rook e7. Bobby goes h4, because the idea is Bobby wants to trap the knight to h7. He doesn't want it to be able to move, and the knight can't come here because of being taken. If it goes there, then there's not, I guess it could go there, but then it's really ugly looking. Actually, it can't go there, can it? No. If it went here, takes, and you lost a queen and a knight for a rook, 2 rooks. So that's not a good trade. So he can't play there. So he's got to go rook b7, and guard. And this knight is the linchpin that is holding everything together. If this guy can be removed, the queen will fall. So pawn push. Now at this point, they actually had a TV thing that everybody in the world was watching. All the grandmasters that during that time were scratching their chins, going, "What is Bobby doing? This hasn't been played before. What's e6? Why e6? Boris has no space to move. It's like he's being deprived of oxygen, and slowly he's fading away." And they're like, how could Boris Spassky be dominated like this? That's basically what was spoken in some words. There was a lot more words, but that's basically what they were saying. How could Boris Spassky be beaten like this? He's the world champion. He's the man. He's the guy who held the title a long time. He didn't get to be world champion by not being an excellent strategist, tactic, and understanding the patterns. And all the grandmasters and the TV people back then were scratching their chin going, who is this kid from Brooklyn? This boy named Bobby James Fischer. He's giving the world champion a run for his money. And after he won the whole tournament and became the world champion, he was the most famous man on the planet. It was like he went from, if you want to do the Hercules thing, the song, he went from zero to the most famous person ever, and one chess tournament. So it's like, wow. Think about that. How wouldn't you like that from being, just a kid from Brooklyn to now you're the most famous person. Everybody wants to meet you, shake your hand. All the world leaders want you to come and have dinner with them, talk with them, everything. Now there's posters that say your name on it. At Wall Street, they had on the thing that circled the buildings that Bobby was world champion. You're coming home, you have a a crowd greeting you, shouting your name. But we got to remember, guys, that it's not about our glorification. It's about the Lord's glorification. So just keep that in mind, because pride goeth before a fall. You know what I mean? When you make great strides in your games, guys, keep in mind that it's not you who does it, okay? It's the people who supported you throughout that whole entire time. Because there's going to be people that arise when you're successful that try to befriend you, that weren't there when you were the one that was struggling, climbing up the ladder, sweating. So just keep that in mind. Just some words, I guess, from me to you. So we'll get back to this. And so Boris played basically the only move that kind of would keep the position going. He moved his bishop from b7 to c7. His b c7. Yep. Queen slides in now. There's a threat of. Let me see. Let's see. Okay, if he plays here, takes, and now there's a threat of a queen check. And queen takes, queen's check. Yeah, that's actually what happens. He could actually play rook here now, and it's just a devastating attack. Queen to e8. He's trying everything to hold this square from not being taken by Bobby. Bobby can get a rook to f7. It's all over. So, but Bobby sees one thing. Boris's last tempo moves would be to get this pawn going and try to break up this structure here. He may try here, and then take to attack this bishop. So Bobby stops any hope of that by playing a4. This queen is deprived of a spot there. If she goes here, if the queen goes here, you go, like, I'll show you. If she goes here, you go whop, and then takes, and there's no real reason. He would come here. Let's see what could be played is check, queen, and then that would happen. Then you would have a check, and then the king would come up, check there, check, takes, and then now you have the potential for a checkmate, because he's going to have to either play here. If he plays there, you get mate. So that was the whole idea. That's why a4 was played, to set up for that whole entire line. So queen d8, that's the only thing he can do, really. He can't move his rooks, can't move his knight. Everything's like totally deprived. And I know you're thinking, why can't he just move here? Because of that. Takes. If the king moves over, now you have a idea of, I think there's a check here. Takes, actually you'd have to take here, and then even if he might try to, he might actually at this point you'd play here, and then if that happens you just move in. There's no way to guard this. One of these pawns is going to become a queen, so Bobby has a winning endgame no matter what he does. So it's just like, wow. So Bobby passes the move. He's like, you know what, I'm just going to go hey. Yeah. We're almost done. Just 1 sec. We wanna. This is the game, and we're gonna finish this one out. Then we'll do the game. Hey, how you doing? So yeah, he plays back. Bobby then plays up. He's basically just moving back and forth. Boris doesn't have anything that he really can do but move back and forth with the queen. The queen moves. He retreats back. Now. This idea is real because of here, and it's like really. So he plays there. Now there's double mating threat happening. He takes. He has to sack the knight, and when he does that, then it takes. The king goes to g8, bishop c. Now the idea of pushing and with takes. Bobby would be up a queen. He'd be up a queen, and Boris would only have a rook. So all this is starting to happen. King h8, and then queen slides into f4 because there's no way of stopping this. That's game over. And but when this happened here, when Bobby moved f4, which is where the game stopped, Boris went and he smiled. He sat back in his nice, comfortable chair. Like, you know, they have these really nice chairs, comfortable ones. And he in the swivel chair, sitting back, like going like this. And then he got up. He couldn't believe it. He got up, and then Bobby didn't know what was going to happen, and all of a sudden he went like this. And the whole crowd broke out clapping. And it was like back in the States, the whole United States exploded with joy. And that was cool. And so I wanted to show you first of all game 3 that started this, and game 6 that basically won the whole entire thing. Okay, now we're gonna look at Fox's game, one of the games. It's from I think it's. Let me pull this one up. I'll see what it is. Hold on. But man, I'm gonna tomorrow. I'm gonna pull up a game. Yes, cool. I'm going to do a couple. Maybe I'm gonna try to do at least one or maybe two Nakamura games from. Yeah, I'm gonna from the showdown in St. Louis when he was facing Topalov. I'm gonna grab two of those games. I know I'm gonna do at least one, and we're gonna do a Nakamura series. I'm gonna try to do maybe probably a game a day every night, and then we'll go through all of his and Topalov. I might even go through the ones that he lost, because it's good to see how Topalov played good as well. We don't want to just make Topalov feel bad. So we'll throw in a win for Topalov too. So all right, let's take a look at this. I have to pull this up and apply it onto LIHS. Let's see. Okay, copy. Let's pull this up. Oops, wrong one. Boom. import. There we go. Boom. This is Capablanca versus Bonvinic. I want to pronounce the word that right. Macau. We'll call him Macau, and we'll call White Macau, and we'll call Black, who's actually Capablanca Kappa, so that I can just abbreviate it. Okay, so Macau goes D4. Kappa goes knight f6. So let's see what their idea is. So they're going into a Indian. So it's a Ninzo Indian defense, huh? I think it was Macau. Yeah, so I think that's, yeah. I'll just call it. Yeah, you're right. I think that's. Well, I could call him Bonvinic. I'll call him Bonvinic. That's probably better because then I know how to pronounce that. Kappa and Bonvinic. Okay, Kappa. Well, Bonvinic went knight c3, and what his idea is to go next is e4 and dominate the center, control the center. Because if he can get a pawn here, he'll have here, 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 here. He's going to have a massive center of control. So that's why Bonvinic wants to play e4 next. Now e4 doesn't apply, because if e4 is played, bye pawn, because this knight is pinned to the king. So that cannot be played. So he plays e3. Bonvinic does, and Kappa plays c5. He's trying to get squares in the center. He wants to attack the center. He wants to demand a spot in the center. So if something takes now, Kappa has control into the center. He also has the ability of implanting a knight on e4. So, which then would be a double attack if there's a knight here. And then bishop, knight would take bishop, queen would take, and then there would be a pin here and maybe here, and then doubling up there. You never know. There's a whole bunch of ideas that would arise. So Bonvinic doesn't want to allow that happen, so he attacks. So Kappa just takes, says, you know what? I sacked my bishop for a knight, but look at your weak a3 pawn. Forever, this will be isolated. I can go after it when this rook moves and this bishop moves. When these two pieces are gone, this pawn is no longer protected. All I need to do is snap it off, and then I have my passer. So the takes benefited White with one thing. He now has the two bishops, but if Bonvinic can't take advantage of his advantage of the dark squared bishop, then it was a bad idea to have played a3 to trade off. It'd been better to play here or something, maybe, because what's happening, the structure is on the dark squares, so the bishop that Bonvinic has is actually a bad bishop because of how many pawns are on the color of the bishop. The majority of them are. So he traded a knight. Kappa traded a bishop for a good knight of Bonvinic's to give him a horrible bishop in exchange. So is it worth it? Potentially Bonvinic can open up the position. Maybe if he plays here he can activate it, but Do you really want to do that? You never, it's kind of one of those things. It's a give and take. Like Bobby says, you give a square to get a square. C5. Pawn C5. Kappa goes, all in. It's like he's saying, front line, let's charge, let's get this. So he takes, and now Bonvinic activates his bishop and says, you know what, next I'll play here, we'll kick this knight out, and potentially I have a pawn snap with check. So Kappa castle king sides. Bonvinic goes knight e2. He's getting ready to castle. And now Kappa connects everything, prepares to fianchetto his bishop, and then have this whole diagonal once this pawn is moved for attack. Castles a6. Or, oops, I missed that. Yeah, knight actually e3, e2 is an interesting idea, because I think it was that if yeah, knight back here. 1 second, we're gonna go back. This is an interesting idea, but there's a problem with it. Bishop to g4, and that allows the light squared bishop to actually come out with a pin. It's a good idea, but it's just not what Bonvinic would have wanted a knight to be pinned, so that's why he went knight to e2. Every move has a reason behind it, and that was the reason. He also, if this was to be taken to, he could actually take back with his knight or his pawn, it depends, and also he can reroute his knight to a better square, because, excuse me, the knight has the idea of going to f4, which is on the opposite color of black's bishop. So it's now in an outpost, semi-outpost, because it could be kicked with g5. Just 1 second, I need a drink of water. And yeah, Bonvinic takes, and now Capablanca has accomplished his goal of sticking white, or sticking Bonvinic with a bishop that is a Sour Patch Kid, which has nothing to do with the position. I don't know if b2 was actually the best move in this sitch. I am not sure if that was a wise decision. Maybe pushing here might have been a better idea to kind of activate your bishop. But this, it does connect the pieces, but it's like, really? You're putting it on a piece that's biting granite? Even if this takes and takes, you have a bishop right here that is doing what? Nothing. He put his bishop on the worst square. Any square would have been better than this. He would have loved to have been here. This pawn would have been protected by the queen. The bishop could have played here, pinning this pawn to the rook. There's a lot more than bishop to b2. Queen d7 is a good move. That connects the rooks. Usually when the rooks are connected, guys, it means that the middle game has begun. So Kappa actually he's entered the middle game with a better move sequence. It's almost like who can get to the middle game first also is winning, because you know then that the development is at its peak, or it's the height of where it wants to be. Because to enter a middle game, everything has to be developed. I don't see it being good on D either. I think he just wanted to get it out of the way because he had a plan. Okay, true. I was actually planning on him before he moved to B2 or D2. I would have played A6. I mean A4, and then planted my bishop on A3. That's just what I would have done because it has a better scope there, and it just has more of a chance of doing something. Yeah, yeah. I think this it's a long-term goal, but it's just too bishop to b2. Yeah, it gets out of the way, but I just don't like bishop b2 because it's all dependent on getting these two pawns out of the way. Otherwise, this bishop is like, as Jeremy Silverman would say, a tall pawn, a Tall pawn. And so, fine, really, right now, he couldn't have done that like how many moves ago? Like he could have done that 2 moves ago. Or let's see, after there, he could have done that a move ago. Why did he move right now? He could have had his knight, his bishop on a wonderful square, but you know what? He must have an idea, so we'll continue onward and see what their idea is. So the rook, Kappa's rook gets developed to in the half-open file, and he controls it. It's like power when you have a rook eyeing that spot. It's like, yeah, it's for real. So the queen comes up. Now it's attacking the knight. So it's attacking the knight. The knight's going to have to move. Our c4 is played wop. Oh my word! This is horrible for black for white. This is horrible. Now the dark squared bishop is very sad looking. It's like it only has one spot that it can go to do anything, and that spot now doesn't do anything. It's like, really, what did the knight that he traded for the bishop now is looking awful pretty compared to this little thing here, that little guy. Queen c2, and so now knight b goes the knight goes to b8, and he's gonna either, I don't know if he'll go there. Let's see, there. He might go here, or potentially he might move the queen, then jump in. No, that would be a bad move to go here, because then there'd be no scope for the knight to come in. So more than likely, he has an idea of going to c6 and potentially here. No, I'm sorry. C6. And then what? Oh, right here. Sorry, and then right there. Yeah, this would be horrible. That'd be taken. We wouldn't want that to happen for sure. Now the rook develops to e1. The a rook goes to e1. But the sad thing now is this queen is bound to the protection of the a pawn, and if this a pawn falls, there's this rook that's just going to escort the pawn down the board. That feels so comfortable. That pawn's like, thank you for all the support. If that pawn was to fall, so see, there goes c6, like we talked about. Knight g3, a5, and then he jumps in. You know what's so funny? I didn't even look at the game. I didn't even look at it, and I knew exactly what his idea of the knight move here was. I didn't even look at it because you kind of can, when you start getting an understanding in chess, you can kind of see where their moves are going, and then that's when you start improving. When you can visualize, you can say, why did he move here, and then you go, huh? Yeah, why did he? That's right. Why did he move his knight here? And you'd say, because the queen retreated back. Does it? And it's like, what's the best square for that knight? Boom, boom, boom. And it just makes sense where to place it at that point. Yeah. White is saying your knight looks pretty, but it isn't actually doing it much. Yeah, you're right. In some, but actually it is doing something if you think about it. What is the knight doing? It's stopping the queen from defending the a4 pawn, so that this pawn will be taken, and then in comes the sweet pawn that will end up becoming a queen. So this knight is blocking the queen from one thing down. It does block. Yeah, that is true. That's his whole idea. It's on a, and now the knight controls two critical squares. The a1 square, which now this rook can't come over to defend anymore. So this pawn is gonna be lost. It'll have to either push up, and if it does that, then the knight will take. So this pawn is firmly, disappointedly bye-byed. Totally. That was a stellar move. In comes the queen. Whap. And now Kappa has accomplished his end game goal. He's got his wonderful outside passer. E5. Bonvinek's thinking, you know what? I got to do something, so he attacks the knight. There's really nothing that is worrying Kappa at this point, because now he's got this passer, and it's a matter of time before this guy gets. He could actually get, I think, let me see, could he? What could this knight? Oh, I got it. He can actually come here now, and then come in, or something like that. So this knight has a jumping spot to go to. So queen f2. Now Kappa makes a flight square for his king to go to. If he wants to infiltrate in, he can. These pawns aren't going anywhere. This is the dark square bishop is totally out of play. There's no hope for the bishop. This knight stops infiltration of this pawn, the rook. So the queen's safe. Everything's safe. It's nothing but not fun. And if the queen hadn't moved, guys, the queen might have implanted itself on a2, pitting the queen potentially. There's a whole bunch of different ideas that could arise now. f4 is a good idea. He's going to try to crunch the king side a little bit, but f5 is easily f4 is easily parried with f5. And so Kappa keeps the king side still closed. Knight takes. Now the knight's going to be comfortably cushioned right into e4 later on once this guy's gone. So now he's trying to break the center. Takes, and now the idea is if he takes here, Kappa's going into an endgame. Remember we talked about it. He's the master, and if you want to learn about endgames, Capablanca actually has a book on endgames. So I would say to maybe take a look at it if you got a library or something. They may have it in there, and just read on some of his endgames. They're so cool how he's set up. He teaches you how to. He even gives a game where he had the person in the end game. I don't remember what the name of the guy was. He had him shift one side, but he actually was playing to go to another side, and he won the game that way in an end game. So Kappa won many end games that were draws because he knew so much about it. So endgame has a very important role in chess, and if you don't study endgame, you're only going to get to a certain level in chess, and then you're going to stay there, because you're going to there's a lot of games that'll go to the endgame, and if you don't know how it works, you'll get sometimes lucky and win. But if you know for sure how it works, you can even be down and still be able to draw a game. So just keep that in mind when somebody tells you that's your friend. Would you like to study endgame with me? Just keep that in mind. Okay, so rook e6. He's trying to. My teacher called this an anchor. If you can get a pawn like this and a rook here, it's an anchor. So he's trying to anchor the rook to e6, but it's not really an anchor because this pawn can actually take. And there's no real worry about taking either, because the knight comes up and a pawn's going to fall. This pawn will potentially fall. There's still this passing threat, so it's like, really? The queen comes to e7. Now the queen's being attacked. Takes. Knight check. Pawn can't take knight. Let's hang. Yeah. Yeah, isn't that interesting that check. Check. And it's really odd that White actually won this. That's pretty peculiar how I'm surprised that Kappa actually lost this. Huh. Was there anything else that could have been played? I see that rook takes. Huh. Yeah, that makes sense now that that's just so strange that that happened. It's just like, really, you would think with that Capablanca would actually be the one that's winning here. But could potentially he play here? Or maybe... Oh yeah, he can't play there because of the bishop. That's right. Oh boy. Maybe if Kappa would have maybe brought his knight back, maybe that would have been a better idea. Kind of try to get his knight rerouted in. Like there's something there that fails because it takes there. So maybe now that might potentially have a thing. But then you got there, and now the pin's gone, and I don't know. I want to see what the computer said. Oops. Still has a B to save the pawn. Yeah. I want to see what the computer says though on this one, because I really thought for sure that yeah, he missed his checking idea. That's what the computer says. This actually wins. What actually is played though here? So back, and then okay, gotcha. Well, I just want to see what. Okay, here. That was actually a blunder. So he had a potential to that. See, okay, that's correct still. Now that's the thing. Why didn't Kappa just, he didn't have to take. Well, I guess you're gonna have to take, huh? So 9. So who'd have thunk that just taking here neutralizes everything? Just that take. Wow. Kappa missed the draw. Because if he moved here, then he has that. And then the queen takes and there. So what did it say for white to play? Yeah. Whoa, it actually gave him a... That was strange. So it says here. And then now it's 8 pawns. So you have a check. That's funny. The computer doesn't even know what to do. He can't even check there. Yeah, that's sad. That's not fun for sure. Yeah, this is pretty. Ah, man, I really was hoping Kappa was gonna win, but he probably took it home and learned from it. So that's the. Okay, we'll do some tactics that I gotta kind of log off for some studies and work. Let's see what do we got here. We're getting up in the ratings. We're doing better on our thing. So let's see here. I believe takes. If queen takes, then you got a fork. So if takes, I'm gonna go with takes. Nope. Oh, fork. What about takes here? Oh, okay, because then you take with the rook. That is not fun for sure. Okay, we gotta stay focused down here. Let's say a double attack maybe. If we played maybe a double attack on g4, what do you guys think? Because then if he plays here, you can play f4. Yep. There we go. That is right on. Right. That's good. That's a good one. Tells you that you have to look for everything. Let's see here. There is pawn c5 maybe. That blocks the bishop. I think pawn c5 is it. Then knight takes, and then you take there. Yeah. Okay. I'm wondering if takes here is, I mean, pushing there isn't an idea, the fork. And then if bishop takes, that's what I'm thinking. Okay, if here takes. Okay, I think that C e4. What do you guys think? E4? Because I see that e4 looks good because it is an interesting idea because yeah. Huh. I'm thinking maybe there, queen f6, because then that attacks that pawn there. What do you think? Queen f6, guys? Oh. Oh, man, really? Oh, Queen e2. Huh. What's that idea? Oh. Gotcha. Yeah. But you have to... Oh, we'll go back and we'll take a look. Yeah, if we moved here, and then yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yep, that's right. That's interesting for sure. Okay, let's go back. We'll take a look to see what we got here. Okay, so the queen is. I think we have an intermezzo move of takes. Oh wow. Interesting. So, oh boy. Give us. I think it's takes. No? Oh, just move the king? Huh. Interesting. That's an interesting one that was interesting. I now see why they did that. That was totally cool. That was a cool idea for sure. It does look trapped. That is true. Yeah. 96. 96. Oh yeah. There we go. Yeah, you have to look for forks. That was a tactic right there. Something's telling me rook takes, pawn takes. Takes. I don't think we can stop that. I think oh, queen takes f. Oh, I think yeah, you're right. Cause there, here, here, and the queen can't intercept. Oh, was it rook takes first? Then takes. Oops. And then rook retreats back. Huh. That's peculiar. Let's go back and check to see why the other line failed. Okay. If you take here, takes. You don't have to take, by the way. The pawn doesn't have to take. That's why it fails. Yeah. It's not a forced take back. He could just say, you know what? Thank you. I'll give you these. I'll give you this and this for that, and you can have this spot here, but I'm not gonna allow this to happen. I see that now too. Huh. The only way for this take to actually work is for that. Yeah. Yep, yep, yep. And then you retreat back, and there we go. I'm glad I went over that again because I wanted to see. We'll do this one here, and we're gonna get this one right. I want to get this one right so I can get up to 1900, and then that'll be a good spot to end the stream. Let's see here. Okay, if you play bishop, we play bishop takes. No. Oh boy. Oh, interesting. With this, nope, because he could take there. That's right. That's right. That's right. Interesting. If we take here, then he takes here, we take here, the bishop takes doesn't work, so it's... Alright. Well, I'm going to have to log off, though. Thank you, Fox, for that game. That was really, really interesting about Capablanca, how, you may look like you're winning, you may have won a pawn, but because you shuffled all your strong pieces to one side, your opponent can actually attack you on the other. Yeah, and that was really, really interesting. And thank you also, guys, that were on and listening that didn't participate. I hope you enjoyed the stream about Bobby Fischer versus Boris Spassky, Game 6, that started Bobby's line of victory all the way to world champion. I also am going to pick a game from Topalov versus Nakamura. Yeah, I'm gonna be on. I will be on tomorrow. But we are going to do a game from Topalov versus Nakamura, the showdown in St. Louis. So I'll pick one game, and he had a lot of games that he played, and so we'll go over. We'll do like one day that he won and one day that he lost, and we'll look at how he played differently. Okay. With that, guys, thank you for logging on and streaming. As Wesley So says, serve the Lord Jesus, and as I say, God bless, guys, and I'll see you next time on Chess Cruncher TV. And study hard, do good in chess, and serve the Lord. And remember, keep moving forward.